Hi everyone, welcome to the first video on our new channel. Today we have Sequeira playing Akiri Kraum stacks. My name is Luís and I'm playing Yisan for the first time. Eduardo is playing Thrasios and Vial Smasher Akiri's control, and Baal, yes that's his birth name, is playing Kenrith, the returned king. So I won the die roll and this is my first 7. This hand is really great, it has 2 lands and a mana dork, which is exactly what you want when you're playing Yisan. Also, it has an answer to Curse Totem and Grafdigger's Cage. Both of these cards would stop me from activating Yisan and are both cards which we are likely to see out of the other decks on the table. And, to top it all off, there's a crop rotation, which can get Gaia's Cradle. This would greatly speed up our deck while working great with the Winter Orb in play. This was Eduardo's hand. He kept it because it had access to counter magic for the Flash Hulk player, a Gitaxian probe which would let him know when he needs to have mana up for counter magic, and it also had a Legacy's Allure, which can be very strong against Yisan. It can seal Yisan Commander or even one of its smaller combo pieces. It also had access to a Mindblade Render for card advantage later. So this was Baal's hand. He was playing Kenrith, the Returned King, with the Teamer Flashline and also Dramatic Reversal combo. He kept his second 7 with a Hallowed Fountain, a Verdant Catacombs, a Scalding Tarn, a Dovin's Veto, a Muddled Mixture, a Dramatic Reversal, and a Grand Abolisher. This was a slow hand, but it does have 2 pieces of the Dramatic Reversal combo. If you can eventually pick up some Dorks or some Mana Rocks, he can go off. He also has Interaction and a way to protect his combo. This was Sequeira's hand. He kept a hand with a Snow-Covered Island, a Marsh Flats, a Glacial Fortress, a Mana Vault, a Nuba Mask, a Ral Zarek, and a Teferi, Temporal Archmage. This hand is pretty good. It has a Mana Vault turn 1, and he can then play Ral Zarek on turn 2. He also has a Nuba Mask, which is an old card from Kamigawa. Basically, it says that whenever you would draw, you have to exile instead, and you can only play that card that turn that you drew it. This is very good tech against blue decks, because if you exile a counterspell on your draw step, you can basically never use it. For my first turn, I play a Forest and an Elvish Mystic, then I pass. Eduardo starts by probing Baal. He knows he is the player with the potential to win the quickest, through Flash Hulk, and wants to know if he needs to have counter magic up soon. He proceeds to top deck a Soul Ring and play it for his turn. Baal kept a slow hand and he needs a few draws to get going, so he plays a Hallowed Fountain tapped and passes it back. Sequeira plays an Island, a Mana Vault, and passes. For my turn, I play a Forest and play a Yisan. Eduardo plays a Thrasios for turn, then passes. Baal casts a Preordain, tops one, bottoms the other, plays a Scalding Tarn and ships the turn. Sequeira plays a Marshflight for turn, cracks it, which reminds Baal he wanted to play around Aven Mind Sensor, so he decides to crack his fetch in response before Sequeira has 3 mana. Baal finds a Breeding Pool, which enters play tapped. Sequeira pays 2 for a Sacred Foundry untapped, taps his Mana Vault to cast a Ral Zarek. Ral Zarek can -2 to bolt any target, so he can keep Yisan off the table for a while if he wants to. However, because he would then die to Elvish Mystic and Thrasios, he decides to plus instead, untapping his Mana Vault and tapping Eduardo's Soul Ring. He uses the 1 floating and taps his Mana Vault again to cast Uber Mask. For my turn, I exile a Finhorn Elves to Uber Mask. I think for a while and end up making a weird play. I start by playing Mana Vault, I then tap it and an Elvish Mystic to verse Yisan for 1. I find a Sylvan Safekeeper that will keep the Ral Zarek from minusing on my creatures. I then crop rotation my forests into a Gaia's Cradle. Play a Forest for turn, and cast Finale of Devastation, X equals 2, and go and find a Collector Roof. This will turn off the Soul Ring and Sequeira's Mana Vault. Then I play my Finhorn Elves and pass the turn. On Eduardo's turn, he exiles a Compost to Uber Mask and punches Ral for 1 damage. Then he passes the turn without making his line drop. On Baal's turn, he reveals a Flash to Uber Mask. He then plays a Verdant Catacombs and a Mana Crypt, because he forgot about Collector Roof and was counting on playing Flash. He then puts Flash on a stack. Since he didn't tutor anything to his hand before, Eduardo figures the chances of Protean Hulk being in his hands are slim, and therefore lets it resolve. He cracks his fetch for an Underground Sea, again to play around Aven Mind Sensor, and passes the turn. Sequeira untaps, loses 1 life to Mana Vault, and reveals Linvala for Uber Mask. He pluses Ral to untap one of his lands and casts her, then he passes. On my turn, I lose a life from Mana Vault and exile Mox Diamond for Uber Mask. I cast it without discarding a land, just so it goes into my graveyard. I go to attacks and send everything at Ral's Eric to get it off the table. Sequeira decides to kill Sylvan Safekeeper with Linvala, and on my second main phase I play a Winter Orb. Eduardo doesn't want to get even more behind on mana, so he counters it with delay. Eduardo untaps and reveals an Ass Foretold to Upamask, which he sadly cannot cast. Baal untaps, wins the Mana Crypt flip, and reveals a Freed from the Real to Upamask. He plays an Exotic Orchard and passes. Sequeira untaps, loses a life to Mana Vault, and reveals a Talisman of Creativity to Upamask. He then casts a Captain Lannery Storm, attacks me for 2 damage, and makes a treasure. Then he passes. I untap and pay 4 mana to untap Mana Vault and remove a time counter from Winter Orb. Then I reveal Azusa, lost but seeking to Upamask. I still have no answers to Linvala, so I send everything at Baal and then I pass. Eduardo reveals a Deathrite Shaman to Upamask. He plays it, then passes. Baal untaps and wins the Mana Crypt flip. He reveals an Narset to Upamask. He plays her, then uses her Mana's ability to find an Arcane Signet. Sequeira takes 1 damage in his upkeep, reveals a Rule of Law for turn, and decides to play Akiri instead. Attacks me for 5 damage, I take it. For my turn, I reveal a Wirewood Symbiote to Upamask and attack Baal and his Narset, leaving her at 1 just in case someone tries to draw cards. For his turn, Eduardo reveals a Natural State and casts it, targeting my Mana Vault. Baal reveals a Dockside Extortionist to Upamask. He plays it, generating 5 treasures. He uses Forbidden Orchard to pay for it and gives a spirit to Eduardo. Then he passes the turn. Sequeira reveals a Grafdigger's Cage and he plays it, and then a Rest in Peace. Before he attacks, I cast a Declaimer, targeting Grafdigger's Cage. This is another thing that's stopping Yisan from activating, and it also decreases Akiri's power by 1. I declare no blocks and take 8 damage. On my turn, I take the last counter off of Winter Orb and reveal an Arbor Elf for Upamask. I go to attacks and attack Baal with Collector Oof, then I pass the turn. Eduardo reveals a Finale of Devastation for his draw, which he cannot cast because his mana is locked by Collector Oof and Linvala. Baal reveals an Incubation Druid, plays it and passes. Sequeira reveals a Dovin's Veto and repeats last turn's attacks. I considered jumping with Yisan since I can just replay him, but I decide instead to sacrifice a Mana Dork and gamble on top decking either removal for Linvala or something more significant. Unfortunately for my turn, all I draw is a Command Beacon, so I attack Baal and pass. Eduardo top decks a Flame Sweep, which he cannot play since he doesn't have red mana. He passes. Baal wins the Mana Crypt flip, reveals a Bloodstained Mire for Upamask, then he plays it. He gracks it immediately for a Plateau, then he plays a Grand Abolisher, then he passes the turn. Sequeira loses a life to Mana Vault, reveals a Rhystic Study, which doesn't do much with an Upamask in play. He attacks me with Linvala and Akiri, and this time I jump with Yisan. For my turn, I reveal a Forest to Upamask, replay my Yisan, and then I pass. Eduardo reveals a counterspell for Upamask. With nothing else to do, he passes the turn. Baal wins the Mana Crypt flip, reveals a Force of Will for turn, then he passes. Sequeira loses a life to Mana Vault. He reveals a Felwar Stone for Upamask. He plays it just to increase Akiri's power. He goes to combat and he attacks Baal. Baal chump blocks with Dockside Extortionist and takes 3 damage from Linvala. For my turn, I draw a Force of Vigor and cast it, targeting Eduardo's Soul Ring and Sequeira's Felwar Stone. Eduardo dispels it, clinging to the hope of one day activating his Thrasios. Then I attack Baal with Yisan. He declares no blockers. On Eduardo's turn, he finally reveals a land to Upamask. He plays an Overgrown Tomb untapped, paying 2 life, and casts Mindblade Render. Baal reveals a Fëanor Elves for turn. He casts it, using Forbidden Orchard, giving me a spirit. Pedro loses 1 life to Mana Vault. He reveals a Silent Gravestone to Upamask and plays it, just to pump Akiri's attack. He goes to attacks and sends Linvala and Akiri at Baal. He chump blocks with Fëanor Elves, takes 3 damage. For my turn, I reveal a Soul Ring to Upamask and send Yisan at Baal. Eduardo reveals a Submerge for turn and casts it, targeting Captain Linary Storm. He does this because he won't be able to cast it next turn. It will become exiled forever through Upamask. On Baal's turn, he wins the Mana Crypt flip and reveals Birds of Paradise to Upamask. He instantly casts it, then passes. On Pedro's turn, he takes 1 damage from Mana Vault, reveals Captain Linary Storm, which he can't cast because he only has 1 mana available. He goes to combat and attacks Baal. He jump blocks Linvala with Birds of Paradise and Akiri with Grand Abolish, trying to show that he really doesn't want a combo right now. For my turn, I untap and reveal a Root Maze because there's still not enough stacks. I cast it and then I pass the turn. Eduardo reveals a Grafdigger's Cage to Upamask. He casts it, it enters the battlefield tapped because there's a Root Maze in play. He passes the turn. Baal wins the Mana Crypt flip and reveals a Neoform to Upamask. It doesn't do anything because there's a Grafdigger's Cage in play, so it just passes the turn. Pedro loses 1 life to Mana Vault. He reveals a Mizzium Mortars to Upamask. He attacked me with Akiri and Baal with Linvala. I chump blocked with the Spirit. Baal takes 3 damage. On his second main phase, he casts Mizzium Mortars, targeting Wirewood Symbiote. On my turn, I finally draw something relevant and reveal a Tendershoot Dryad to Upamask. I tap my Cradle in a forest to cast it and immediately get the City's Blessing. On Eduardo's turn, I make a Saproling and he reveals a Jace, Yielder of Secrets to Upamask. He doesn't have the mana to cast it. He attacks Sequeira with his Mindblade Render. Sequeira lets it through. He wants Eduardo to draw more cards, to eventually draw an answer to Tendershoot Dryad. He exiles a Swamp to Upamask, which he plays, and then passes. On Baal's turn, I make another token. He wins the Mana Crypt flip, and reveals a Force of Vigor for Upamask. He uses it to get rid of Winter Orb and his own Mana Crypt, giving a Spirit to Sequeira. He passes the turn. On Sequeira's turn, he loses 1 life to Mana Vault. I make another token, and he reveals a Snow-Covered Plains for Upamask. He goes to combat and swings Akiri and Linvala at me. I decide to chump block with Elvish Mystic and took 3 damage from Linvala. On my turn, I make another token, reveal a forest for Upamask, and play it. I send my 3/3 Saprolings and my Yisan at Sequeira. He kills one of the tokens with Akiri and jumps another with his spirits. On Eduardo's turn, I make another token, and he reveals and casts a Worldly Tutor. This goes and finds Sig, River Cutthroat. Then he passes. On Baal's turn, I make a Saproling and he reveals a City of Brass. It enters play tapped. He transmutes a Muddle Mixture to try and find an answer to this board state. He looks and the best thing he can find is a Gilded Drake. He chooses it and decides to cast it using Forbidden Orchard, giving me a spirit. When Gilded Drake enters the battlefield, he switches places with Tendershoot Dryad. On Sequeira's turn, he loses 1 life to Mana Vault. Baal makes a 1/1 Saproling. Sequeira reveals a Dockside Extortionist to Upamask. Casts Dockside Extortionist. He makes 8 treasures. He goes to attacks and sends Linvala at Baal and Akiri at me. I chump with my newly acquired spirit. On my turn, Baal makes a Saproling. I draw a land, play it, and attack Sequeira for 3 in the air. On Eduardo's turn, Baal makes a Saproling. Eduardo reveals a Sig, River Cutthroat to Upamask. He plays it, he passes. On Baal's turn, he makes a Saproling. He reveals Torch Courier to Upamask. He sends 3 tokens at Sequeira Sequeira blocks with Akiri and Chump blocks with Dockside Extortionist, taking 3 damage. On his second main phase, he casts Arcane Signet. Then he passes. On Sequeira's turn, he finally decides to pay for Mana Vault, Baal makes a Saproling token, and Sequeira reveals Sword of Fire and Ice to Ubamask. So he goes to attacks and swings 3 at Baal and Akiri at me. Baal takes 3 and loses the game. I chump block with one of the Saprolings. At the end of turn, Sig River Cutthroat triggers, drawing a card. It gets exiled to Ubamask, and it's a Birds of Paradise. On my turn, I finally draw an answer to Linvala in the form of Duplicant. I casted an imprint Linvala. Then I pass, still not being able to activate Yisan due to Eduardo's cage. On his turn, Eduardo reveals a Crimson Zenith for turn. There's a Grafdigger's Cage in play, so he doesn't do anything, he passes the turn. On Sequeira's turn, he reveals a Sulphur Falls. He attacks Akiri at me, I jump with one of the Saprolings. On my turn, I untap and reveal Finhorn Elves to Ubamask. I play it. I go to attacks, and since Eduardo has the Grafdigger's Cage, I attack him. He decides to quadruple block my Duplicant, and I choose to kill his Thrasios. For 4 damage, he activates Thrasios. He reveals a Polluted Delta for Ubamask. On his turn, Eduardo reveals a Snuff Out for Ubamask. He casts it, paying 4 life to kill Akiri. He attacks Pedro for 3 and draws a card off of Mindblade Render. He reveals Preordain. He fetches for a Steam Vents, which enters play tapped because of Root Mace. He casts Preordain, tops both, and reveals a Swamp. He plays it. Then, on his hand step, Sig triggers, and he reveals a Mountain to Ubamask, which gets exiled. On Sequeira's turn, he reveals a Seed of the Cyanoth for Ubamask. He plays it, it enters tapped because of Root Mace. He casts Kraum, Ludovic's Opus, then he passes. On my turn, I reveal Sylvan's Scrying for Ubamask. I cast it and fetch Blast Zone, which enters tapped. I go to combat and attack Eduardo with Yisan and Collector Roof. Then I pass. On his turn, Eduardo reveals a Talisman of Indulgence for Ubamask and casts a Thrasios. He goes to combat and swings at me with Mindblade Render. I chump block with an elf, then he passes. On Sequeira's turn, he untaps and reveals Sword of Feast and Famine. He plays it, but cannot equip it because there's still Collector Roof in play. He passes the turn. For my turn, I reveal Strip Mine for Ubamask. I pay 3 mana to sacrifice Blast Zone, destroying all CMC1 permanents, including the Grafdigger's Cage. I then pay 3 mana to verse Yisan, finding Quirion Ranger. I activate Quirion Ranger, returning a forest, and untapping Yisan. Then I pass the turn. On Eduardo's turn, he reveals an Exotic Orchard for turn. He plays it. He pays 5 mana for a Seedborn Muse. Then he casts Legacy's Allure. This is his second spell this turn, so Kraum triggers and Sequeira can draw a card. Instead it gets exiled to Ubamask and it's a Reflecting Pool. On Sequeira's turn, both he and Eduardo untap, he reveals a Numazao's GT for turn. He goes to attacks and swings Kraum at me for 4 damage. I take 4. He plays Akiri on his second main phase. Then he passes. On his end step, I verse Yisan for 2. I find Priest of Titania. I untap Yisan with Quirion Ranger, and I verse Yisan again, using the 3 mana floating. I go and find Fierce Empath. When it enters the battlefield, I can go search for Crater Hoof Behemoth. Still on Sequeira's end step, Eduardo activates Thrasios. He scries to the bottom and reveals a forest. At this point, there was a rules mistake. Eduardo misread Thrasios and did not resolve his ability correctly. This forest that went into exile should have gone into play. However, this mistake did not affect the outcome of the game. On my turn, both me and Eduardo untap all our lands, and I reveal a Hickory Woodlot for Ubamask. On my main phase, I cast Crater Hoof Behemoth. Eduardo responds by activating Thrasios. He scries to the bottom and reveals a Demonic Consultation, of course. He casts it, naming Pact of Negation. He exiles the top 6 cards of his library and does not exile Pact of Negation. He then exiles Misdirection, Windswept Heath, Islands, and Pact of Negation. He puts Pact of Negation into his hand and casts it, targeting Crater Hoof. Because this is his second spell this turn, Kraum triggers, revealing a Serra Ascendant for Ubamask. Crater Hoof is countered and then exiled through Rest in Peace. I verse Yisan for 4, finding Temur Sabertooth. I untap Yisan by returning a forest through Query on Ranger. I pay 3 mana, I verse Yisan to find a Seedborn Muse, and then I pass. On Eduardo's turn, we both untap. Eduardo chooses to pay for Pact and not lose the game. He exiles a Nature's Claim to Ubamask. He casts it, targeting Ubamask. Sequeira gains 4 life. On his end step, I verse Yisan for 6, finding Woodland Bellower. When it enters the battlefield, I go and search for a creature with CMC 3 or less. I choose Creep Ranger. Then, on Sequeira's turn, we both untap. He casts a Mox Hammer for turn, and then passes. Still on Sequeira's end step, I verse Yisan for 7. Eduardo responds by activating Thrasios. He scries to the bottom and reveals a Terminate. He draws it. Then Yisan's ability resolves, and I go and find a Regal Force. I draw 11 cards and pass priority. Nobody else wants to do anything, so we go to my turn. On my turn, I cast Fierce Empath. Eduardo responds by activating Thrasios. He reveals Swansong. I go and find Great Oak Guardian. At this point, all my opponents concede because they think I have infinite mana with Great Oak Guardian and Temur Sabertooth. I actually don't. And in order to win here, I would have had to bounce my Fierce Empath, replay it, go get Wakeroot Elemental, cast it, and use its ability to untap Cradle, making infinite mana. Once I have infinite mana, I can cast Great Oak Guardian, pump my team, use Temur Sabertooth to return it to my hand, recast Great Oak Guardian, and keep doing this until all my creatures are infinitely large. I would then swing for lethal. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please let us know which kind of decks you would like to see us play next, and we hope you join us for the next one.